The Point of View is brought to you by Cowbell Coffee. Cowbell Coffee. Taste it, love it.
Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. The Point of View picks the right topics, we get the right guests and ask them the relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We're live and interactive tonight as we delve into Kenoforia Test budget statement. It was a supplementary or midterm budget presented to the House to reevaluate performance and reassess targets. Tonight we look at some key highlights of the budget. We try and understand what remains, what is going, and what is being resurrected with a very high-level panel. We'll be right back.
Cowbell has 5 flavors: banana, strawberry, chocolate, coconut. What's the 5th one?
Banana.
Banana?
Okay, Dad. Including mocha, Cowbell has 5 flavors: banana, strawberry, chocolate, and coconut. What is the 5th one?
Strawberry.
No.
Are you feeling hot?
Honey, including mocha. Cowbell has 5 flavors: strawberry, banana, chocomalt, coconut. What's the 5th one?
Chocomalt.
Hey!
Coconut.
Hey!
Nutritious and refreshing, Cowbell has a flavor for everyone.
They think I don't know.
Cowbell, our milk. This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome. So tonight I'll be looking at the Finance Minister's presentation of his midterm budget. A very tough year. This is a few weeks after the President directed him to go to the IMF for what is now used in Ghanaian parlance as a bailout. So of course he gave a summary of where the economy is. He reiterated some key points, made a few adjustments, and also pointed the way forward. We'll be talking to 3 angles to the discussion. I have in studio the Vice President spokesperson and economist Dr. Gideon Boaku is joining us to assess from his own perspective what he thinks the economy is doing. Doc, welcome to the show.
Hi, Bernard. Thank you.
It's good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you too, and good to see my good friend Tia.
Fantastic. We also have here in studio Dr. Theo Ayi, who is a champion, forgive me, Theo Champon, who's an economist and a financial risk analyst, typically based in Europe, but we found a way of bringing him back to Ghana. Dr. Champon, welcome to the show.
Pleasure, Bernard. Yes.
It's good to have you in the flesh.
Yes, good to be here.
And then we'll also be joined by a man who was on the floor. He is the ranking member for the Transport and Road Committee, MP for Adaklu, Honorable Governor Kwame Agboja. He's joining us on the video link. Honorable, thanks for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Bernard, and good evening to the 2 docs.
I'll start with you because right after the budget was presented, a number of media men gathered at the minority side of the press conference, and you were the first MP to speak, and you asked the Minister of Finance to resign. What was so bad about the budget that led you to call for his resignation?
Well, good evening to your cherished viewers, especially those viewing from Adaklu. It is just the amazing insincerity and lack of candor and then inconsistencies of the finance minister. In the 2021 budget, this same finance minister, in relation to the road sector achievement, listed many roads. In fact, he referred to the motorway project as 31.7 kilometers. And in that, he said that the government has already signed an agreement. I think page 845 or something, paragraph 845 of the budget. The government has already signed an agreement to construct the Accra-Tema motorway. In the 2022 budget statement itself, the same man said they have concluded financial arrangement for the construction of the motorway, and indeed that the contractor will be on site early part of 2022. Now, in the media review, this finance minister is telling everybody that procurement processes are ongoing for the construction of the motorway. I mean, what kind of inconsistencies are we dealing with here? Who goes to start procurement process after signing contract, after financial closure? So, I mean, I'm so amazed about that. And then his attempt to bring back tolling, but not calling it tolling, claiming that when the motorway is completed, then it will be tolled. I mean, I don't even get it. We are borrowing money. He actually brings bill to Parliament for us to borrow money and build new tolls. So why is he making it look like it's tolling, but it is a different kind of tolling? It's just like them saying their kind of IMF is going to be a special IMF kind of a thing. So it's quite annoying, to be honest. That is why I said he should probably resign. I'm not the only one calling for his resignation anyway.
Yes, but in terms of the substance of the presentation and the state of the economy, what is so vexatious about the budget so as to have, for example, your colleague Cassiel described the budget as empty and that offers no hope and all kinds of negative expressions? I mean, we are in the middle of an economic crisis. We are on an IMF program. What about the budget makes it so irksome to the minority?
Well, let me give you an example. Let me limit myself to the road sector. Whilst the finance minister was speaking, he didn't even take the opportunity, which some of us he should take, to apologize to, for instance, Mr. Speaker. When Mr. Speaker called for him to come back to Parliament so that we can deal with the issue about the cessation of the collection of tolls, because what he did was almost illegal. You heard the NPP led by John Boedu and the senior minister more or less telling the Speaker to go and collect the tolls himself, if he likes. At the same budget presentation, the finance minister said that he was going to make sure that all the toll workers were going to be reassigned and nobody was going to lose an income. In fact, some of the toll workers were with me in Parliament because since they were sacked, their salaries have not been paid, and then they have not been reassigned. I thought a finance minister that knows that the actions and his actions of his government has led to a situation where we are owing contractors currently 10 billion Ghana cedis or more, and projects on site commitment is about another 40 billion. Would have taken the opportunity to explain to the contractors how they are going to get their...
We seem to have lost the connection with Abuja, but I think his first few points are very clear. He believes the finance minister's comments on the road sector are not very consistent and clear. He cites the motorway, and he was also talking about the toll workers. Mr. Abuja, if you can hear me, if you can wrap up your point, then I'll
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. And then this SMC, small medium contractors, were all there hoping that the finance minister will say something that will lead to the payment of the arrears. He didn't say anything about that. So we are so disappointed in him that I can't see how I can be happy about this, but this statement he made on the floor of Parliament.
Great. So you've chosen to start from the road sector. So maybe I'll take everybody's opening remarks and I'll see if we can move the conversation along. So your initial view is that based on the sector that you are an expert in, the budget did not address the issues concerned. Gideon, what about you, Doc? I mean, of course, you work with the Vice President. You are part of the government. Obviously, you will say this budget is great. What is the most important highlight for you? We picked out 4 new issues. NABCo is ending in September. Motorway, road toll, coming back after the motorway is done. Free SHS, free TVET is staying. E-levy is untouched. So those are some of the 4 key things we picked in terms of policy. Of course, a couple of things like e-tax, e-VAT and stuff like this. What was the most important thing in this budget for you?
Yeah, Bernard, thank you very much. I think basically this mid-year budget review, it's an assessment of the 2022 budget as was presented in November 2021. And having taken into consideration the events that have happened in the global economy, particularly the Russia-Ukraine war and the ripples of COVID-19, government ought to make this presentation to Ghanaians and take stock of what have happened within the period and see whether or not the kind of assumptions and projections and what we had sought to do with the 2022 budget will have to stay on course with all of that, or we needed to let Ghanaians know that because of ABC, we are reviewing certain aspects of the presentation we made to Ghanaians and the kind of pledge that we made in the 2022 budget. So basically, the finance minister sees the opportunity to make some honest admissions. And I think this is key at this point where Ghanaians are reeling under the effects of Russia-Ukraine war, the global economic circumstances, and things have changed, prices have risen, and people are finding it quite difficult to survive. Government needed to share in the pain. So here you may say pain sharing and let people understand that whatever Ghanaians are going through is not, on the blind side of government. I think the finance minister did that so well. If you look at page 3 of the presentation, the paragraph 9, where he says that this state of affairs is quite painful one for me to report to you. And he said, he put himself, personalized it, that as a finance minister, it is indeed difficult for me to be the finance minister at this time, because whatever is happening, he described the whole economic situation as agonizing and difficult times for Ghanaians. And I think that level of honesty and admission of the fact that those in government are not living in a comfortable environment, and those of us down there are also living in a different world, but all of us are equally hit by whatever is happening to the global economic architecture. And therefore, we needed to have that level of understanding and that level of equal, platform, so that as we go ahead, whatever policies government comes out with, the Ghanaian people will accept it. The other thing that the finance minister mentioned that is also important in this budget is the fact that he said government is going to stay within the appropriations of the 2022 budget, and that government is not going to ask for additional funds. But what was said in the 2022 budget is what government is going to stay within and make sure that we rally the entire Ghanaian population along with us and spend within our means, and then make sure that we are able to also lessen the burden that have been brought on to Ghanaians as a result of some of these global phenomena. So that's basically that. There are other issues that come, up in the budget, some of which my good friend Honorable Abuja has referred to, the rules, free SHS and other, because before this presentation, a lot of people had some thinking that, some government expenditures will have to be reduced, especially in some areas of the flagship programs like free SHS, teacher trainee allowance, nursing trainee allowance. People are not so sure, NABCo. And the government came clear on which ones are going to be affected. He gave indication that NABCo is going to come to an end in September. Free SHS is not going to be tied, teacher trainee allowance. But there are other new things that have been introduced, like the COLA. That is the cost of what? Living allowance for public sector workers and all of that. So that's the whole picture. The finance minister did not go to Parliament today to kind of introduce new major policies, but we've been having media reviews for some time now as a country, but I think this one was crucial, especially bearing in mind the things that have happened within the last 6 months to the global economy. If government had come out and presented this media review and created the impression that all is well, and for that matter, we don't need to cut expenditure, we don't need to revise some of the targets. If you look at through the presentation, key targets were revised. The growth rate that we had anticipated to get in 2020 was revised downwards. Inflation target was revised. International reserves target were revised. And that is human. It means that from the president to the last person in government, we all admit that things have happened, and therefore we need to change course and also make sure that we don't just, you know, have this kind of delusional thinking that everything will be.
So your introductory thoughts are to the extent that you think the minister was being candid.
Exactly.
You point to the external shocks that led to the challenge, but you do not admit things like the excessive borrowing, which indeed, borrowing was not really addressed even in the budget. So whilst you say that he sort of shows a bit of contrition by saying we are in a difficult position, the cause of the difficulty is not fully addressed. And the biggest issue for which a lot of people believe we went to the IMF, which is the debt, is barely mentioned. How can that be a candid overview of the situation?
It's really part of the presentation. Why did we have to borrow so much? We had to borrow because of what has happened, and government, you know, cost of government and government expenditure had to increase. You know, COVID-19, you saw what it brought to us, and the kind of expenditures that we had to make with respect to direct COVID-19 expenditure, about 12 billion cedis, and then, you know, other COVID-19 expenditures coming to about 25 billion. So we needed to borrow to spend on all of that. When the Russian-Ukraine war also started, we have seen the increases in prices. I mean, government has to buy crude oil, prices have increased and all of that. So there's a whole lot of things that government had to do, which required that we needed additional funds. Of course, revenues are going low, and so key government expenditures. And because of the exchange rate exposures, our interest payments on our international debt obligations has also gone up, and government needed to find ways to, you know, make all those payments, because our tax revenues are unable to meet all these you know, critical expenditures that we had to make. So the increase in borrowing is coming from somewhere, and so.
But he doesn't mention that. You are the one saying it. He doesn't explain why our borrowing increased in the statement I've read, unless I've read wrong.
Well, I mean,
it's not addressed.
Yeah, but you know, this is not.
And it's possibly the biggest issue if you look at the analysis of many independent analysts ahead of our going to IMF. In fact, there are people who believe that this discussion with the IMF may end up in a debt restructuring. So, arguably, the biggest issue with our economy is the debt. So, is it that the team did not think that a supplementary budget at this point, because you didn't intend to borrow anymore, did not need to tackle the debt question?
Well, I think the issue about debt is something that government cannot, you know, run away from. Already, there's a debt analysis report that is presented to Parliament, and like you said, the whole IMF engagement is going to center on more or less debt sustainability, because the IMF will not lend into unsustainability, and so before the IMF lends to you, they have to make sure you are on a sustainable path. So critically, that is a bigger issue that government will have to deal with. But I guess and understand that probably in the main budget document, there's no way that can be skipped. In the presentation and the speech of the minister to Parliament, it's not everything that can be spelled out in the speech. And so I can understand from that angle. But the issue about debt and how government intends to go on the path of debt sustainability, and some of them are reflected in the macro targets that government talks about, the primary balance, because if you're not going to have positive primary balance, it will be difficult for you to convince anybody that you'll be on a debt sustainability.
So you say
path.
implicitly,
So
implicitly, no problem. Yeah. I'll come back to you. Let me just do, I've read some of your articles, you've written to the conversation, you've analyzed the economy, how I went to the IMF. What were you expecting in this mid-term budget? Were you expecting some of the key issues you raised in our going to IMF and the challenge of economy to be addressed, or is the supplementary budget a different animal when it comes to analyzing the overall economy?
No, it is not. For me, I think there are three key things here. What I expected, number one, was a sense, an admission of the reality, right? Where we've come from, what the issues are. And then number two, the root causes, right, of those challenges. And then number 3, what do we do to get ourselves out of this mess that we find ourselves in? And I think reading through the statement, what comes out clear is that, and to borrow Gideon's words, there's this honest admission. I actually had written that down as an admission of that reality. However, the finance minister actually, in my view, cleverly sort of sought to avoid a bigger debate on the deep, the root causes. So in paragraphs 14 and 15, there is this attempt which, let me quote it, in the latter part of paragraph 14, that it is therefore disheartening when people want to pretend that these developments are purely domestic. And what some of us have actually said is that if you look at the root causes of any crisis, there are 2 things. It's either externally driven, like COVID, war in Russia, Ukraine, or there are internal factors such as your unsustainable borrowing and the debt issues, and even like your banking sector crisis. All of those things are a core part. But the attempt to make it look as though it is just Russia, Ukraine that can solely, right, and you can even add COVID to it, be attributable to what we're finding ourselves in, for me then takes away from us having a bigger and an honest conversation about why we have gotten to where we are now. Because you look at the numbers, even on the deficit numbers, the new ones, the minister says that they're going to be doing 6.6% or so by the end of the year. But as we speak currently in that same statement, we've already done 5.6% as of half year this year. So what that means really is that you need to make some really painful adjustments or painful cuts in order to be able to meet that 6.6%, deficit target that you anticipate for the rest of the year. Not forgetting the fact that you even reduced the revenue side of the equation. And an important conversation which we all have been, and Gideon perhaps may allude to it, it was presented to us as though it is E-levy or IMF. But in the statement that the finance minister read on the House, I didn't hear a single mention of E-levy in that statement, or how much has actually been collected to date, right? So that we then can have a conversation on, okay, do we restructure it, how best to go about it, and all of those things. So I think, yes, there was that admission of some of the reality, but I fundamentally disagree on some of the root causes, because if we don't address them, we will go to the IMF, get your 1.5–2 billion, and the reforms that are needed to anchor the economy, we will still end up, not doing them. Because even the last program that we went to, that we ended it in April 2019, yes, in April. If you look at you read the IMF statement, yes, they commend the government for making some cuts, etc. But they actually have made very stark warning to us that if the very issues that took us there, you don't fix it, and the indicators, the structural benchmarks in that last program, many of them we did not meet, right? So, for example, the payroll reforms, things to do with GIFMIS, things to do with cutting the size of government, things to do with reforming your state-owned enterprises. All those things, are fundamental. And I think, in this mid-year review, for me, it fell short. And it fell short because a lot of the deeper conversation and the root causes, unfortunately, didn't feature in
Did you expect more on debt to be stressed?
Absolutely. Because, look, if you look at any IMF program, the one we went to the last time, the one we'll go to this time, and if you read the IMF's own statement that they gave a few days ago, it's 2 things. To restore macro sustainability, or in other words, debt sustainability, and then fundamentally to ensure that there's equitable growth, right, within the economy. So the debt should have been a bigger part of the conversation, especially given that in the last few months, we have been locked out of the international capital markets. I am on record as having said that in the last couple of years, it's as though we haven't really dealt with the revenue issues. And so any major challenge we have, we go to the market to go and borrow. And we even celebrate, right? We would say, oh, the thing was oversubscribed by 5%, 10%. Sometimes even have, kenke parties, things like that, all of that. So the point is that if something as fundamental as debt sustainability and what we're going to do to address it doesn't really feature prominently in the conversation or in the media budget, then for me it raises a lot more questions. I would maybe concede that what we saw in the House on the floor was just a statement, and perhaps maybe tomorrow, the days to come, there'll be a bigger,
because the full statement, we haven't seen the full budget.
We haven't seen
what
the
we
appendices.
Have is a 26-page
we haven't
statement.
seen the appendices accompanying it. But even without seeing it, the point is that you would come to present your key highlights. And for something as critical as debt sustainability and literally how we have been fiscally reckless as a country, I would have actually expected to see a little bit more on that side, regardless of us staying within the appropriation ceilings and all of that. And as I already hinted, I struggled to see how the new 96 billion revenue and the revised 135.7 billion expenditure targets will be met. And it's just for one key reason, like I said. By half year this year, according to the finance minister, according to the Bank of Ghana, according to other data, we already have done 5.6% deficit. So if you have 6.6 and you want to meet that target and stick to it, then surely something must give. So you need to make some cuts.
This is the point of view. We're talking about the 2022 midterm budget. My guest in studio, Gideon Boaku. He is the spokesperson of the Vice President, Dr. Theo Champong, an economist and financial risk analyst. Honorable Gavin Kwame Agboja, who is the MP for Adaklu and the ranking member of the Transport and Roads Committee. We'll be back with more. We'll look at some social programs as well. What has been removed? What is remaining? What does this point to about government's priorities? Stay with us.
For decades, we have helped businesses connect with their trade partners all over the globe. From Ghana to Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, Senegal, China, Morocco, France, Netherlands, and many other countries. We have made it possible to bring Ghana to the world. We have brought small and medium businesses closer to their customers across the regions in Ghana with our SME support facilities. We have brought relief and smiles to the faces of families with our employee personal loans. With our cutting-edge technology and digital support, we take the burden of complex thinking off you, making life simple. That is who we are, as close as a partner. Bank of Africa. We are indeed the African bank with the global reach.
Mr. Speaker, under the Ministry of Roads and Highways Public-Private Partnership Program for Road Infrastructure, the Design, Build, Finance, Operate, and Maintain Accra-Tema Motorway and Extension PPP project 27.7 kilometers is at the procurement stage. Site work are expected to commence in September 2022. The Government of Ghana has made a strategic decision in line with the Public-Private Partnership Act 2020 to procure the Accra-Tema Motorway and Extensions project through GIF. We deliver a GIF-led PPP financing solution where maximum funds are raised from the market, but majority ownership of the project remains of GIF on behalf of the Ghanaian government. The draft concession agreement between GIF, the Ministry of Roads and Highways, is currently under review by GIF, Highways, the Office of the Attorney General, and the Ministry of Finance. When completed, the concession agreement is expected to be approved by the PPP Committee, Cabinet, and Parliament. The completed road
So that was paragraph 57 and 58 of the budget. He was reading road tolls coming back. Let me go back to Mr. Agboja. I'm not sure if it was cheering or jeering that you guys were doing. When the announcement of the cessation of road tolls was made, you opposed it. Now the minister says, when we build the new motorway, we're going to toll it. So what's the emotion? What do you guys want, Honorable Abuja?
Well, first of all, we wanted honesty. We are honest enough to say that we believe we should keep the road tolls and then trying to find out how we can plug the leakages and increase the approval so that we can raise enough revenue to maintain our roads, pay our contractors and others. But that is not what the finance minister came to do. He pretended that he's talking about road tolls only when the motorway is completed. But we are also borrowing about 4 million euros to build new toll plaza on the Adosu Bridge section of the road project we have approved. So we were quite unhappy in a sense that he should have been more honest to say that, look, I got it wrong, just as I got it wrong with the luxury vehicle tax. I thought the revenues from the E-levy would have been more than this. I got my projections wrong. So let us come back and see how we can bring the tolls back, but then eliminate the challenges we had in the past, which were mainly leakages and then others. But he didn't do that. So we quite unhappy with that. We are not in principle against tolling of roads at all. We don't think it's a political issue. It's a reality. In fact, if you notice, it was for the same reason that in the 90s or so, yes, before the 2000s, that the NDC introduced the road fund as a measure of generating internal resources to build our roads. We believe it is critical, but that is why we are disappointed.
Were you expecting any major statement on any of the social programs? So, for example, in the build-up to this budget, there was a major discussion about free SHS and sustainability. My editorial last week advised the government to review it. The finance minister said the free SHS and free TVET is not under review. He did not say anything about the E-levy, although it's been a big issue in the lead-up to the IMF. Again, NABCo ends in September. Any of those social programs that catches the eye or tax policies that you are either concerned about or worried about?
Yes, critically. Bernard, if you were to go to Adaklu's senior high school tomorrow morning, you will notice that our kids, our younger brothers and sisters that have been sent to school, actually sleep on the corridors. The trunks and other things for the students are on the corridors.
Hey.
The classrooms are not enough. In fact, they don't have dining hall, they don't have kitchen, and they don't have much of those things. I'm now trying to fund a 1.2 million Ghana cedi 8-unit classroom block by myself, not from the common fund. If you were to go to Adaklu Community Senior High School between Chirepe and Abwadi, you will notice that, which is the E block, the government have gone to put up some dormitory facilities but cannot be used because they don't have kitchen. I've been called upon to go and put up a kitchen before boarding students can be brought in there. I'm aware of the numerous calls across the country where the food that is being served to some of our kids in some of the schools is not fit for dogs. And I've noticed how you and your colleagues have tried as much as possible to draw the government attention that politics aside, it's about health and safety and dignity of our children. But because of political expediency, this government won't budge, pretending that free SHS is hunky-dory and everything is okay. Sadly, the children of, people in government are not eating those food, the quality of food that is almost less than what a dog should eat. I doubt if the finance minister's relative, any of his relatives, eat any of those that kind of food. Why am I being called upon as a member of parliament to spend my own money to build classroom blocks for that senior high school? So if you say that senior high school is not under review, what is he talking about? We shouldn't just leave it. Bernard, secondly, I heard my good friend, Dr. Bwaku, talking about the government was being fed in terms of honesty and other things. But in the same budget, we are told that they went and printed 22 billion Ghana cedi without approval. I'm not a finance person, but that is what we are told. So how can we say that we are within budget when we are going now behind printing money? My brother, by the close of this week, and I'm happy Dr. Achampo talked about it, by the close of this week, we are going to borrow another $300 million before Thursday ends. So the debt situation is getting worse. And the ability, and this $300 million is not even the $250 million they are looking for in addition to the $750 to make it $1 billion. This extra borrowing on top of that. So if we don't control our debt, and then we keep saying that we are living within our means, is it $300 million within the government's budget, or can we contain it in our debt situation? So we are in a real situation.
I see. Just quickly, where in the budget did they say they were going to? They had printed 22 billion. Is this in the statement or is in the original document?
I'm told that I've not read. I've heard my colleague Honorable Forsen suggesting that there's some amount of money have been printed at 22 billion and yet to be declared. In fact, he didn't read it. The budget statement, what he presented is about 56 pages, as you are aware. What he read is an abridged version of 20-something page, 26 pages. So if you take the 26 pages, you wouldn't see it. It is part of the 56 pages document, which I think we are going to speak to more broadly tomorrow.
Well, since you haven't seen the 22 billion, let's let it lie, because this is a serious platform for you to make a serious allegation about Bank of Ghana financing unapproved or undeclared 22 billion. It's very serious. So if you haven't seen that specifically, you have to withdraw it, even though we are not on the floor.
I said I've heard various. I'm not saying I've seen it, and in fact, I didn't say I've said I've heard people talking about a $22 billion printing of money in relation to what Dr. Bwako said in terms of we are living within our means. That is why I said it, and I said that if that is the case, is the 300 million we are about to borrow this week all part of living within our means?
But the 300 million we are borrowing, where are we borrowing it from?
Well, it's part of the Swami interchange, 140 million euros, another 98 million for 3 bridges in the northern region, another $30 million for some healthcare related projects, another thing. If you add all of them, we are gone over $300 million already, which will be approved this week. That is different from the $250 million government is seeking as an addition to the 750, which was supposed to be $1 billion. So in effect, we are almost going to gross 1.5 billion by the close of this week if we don't take that.
Let me come back to Gideon in studio. So a couple of points. I think we've dealt with the road toll. So I don't know if you want to move on that. But why is the government refusing to review free SHS?
I think I have to start with the road tolls, and I like the line you went when you tried to correct my good friend. You can't just speak out of conjecture and lay blame on the Bank of Ghana for, printing 22 billion cedis for government and not disclose it. That is not right. On the road toll matter, all of us, I think, largely agree in principle that we need good roads. And if there is an opportunity for users of the road to pay something by way of tolls or taxes to get the roads done, everybody would be happy about it. I think the point of departure is which mode of tolls that you deploy. And that is where government is coming from with the abolition of the road toll system that we had in the country. Because basically, if you look at the tolling system that we had, it didn't ensure equity. It didn't ensure equity in the sense that you have a tolling system that, penalizes or charges certain people and leave others without paying the toll. Those who are living close to the toll and have to cross it in and out every day will have to pay. But somebody's living at East Legon, Roman Ridge, Cantonments, where the rich guys are, they were not paying the tolls. And if you look at the statistics, about 80% of vehicles in this country were not paying the tolls. If the vehicle did not cross that toll booth, he or she was not going to pay. Those who are rich and living in all these posh areas I'm talking about, unless they are going to their village, that they have to drive past Pokuasi or they have to drive past Kasua, they were not paying the tolls. So in terms of ensuring equity, and most of the people who live around these toll booths, take for instance, you go to Tabre in Ashanti region, the people who live around there how many of them have even better paying jobs? But every morning, because they have to drive to Kumasi in and out, they have to pay the tolls. And
so the toll was not equitable.
So
what's the solution?
And also the traffic and all of that. And how much it was giving government.
No problem. But now the finance minister says motorway will be tolled. And then he's also alleging that at the also bridge, there's a road toll plaza being done.
Government had to let go. Now, there has been this new conversation on the mouths of people after the abolition that, oh, we can do the tolling, but let's do it through an automated system where everybody like this is done. I'm sure you can give better examples in UK, Europe, and America. You have to pay once you cross. I mean, and that's also why digitization is very central in all of this. So if you're able to do an automated system where everybody would then have to pay if you cross, and it's not going to bring the traffic situation and all of that, I think it is something that people will welcome. What the finance minister said is that there's going to be some PPP arrangements between government and the private sector to get some roads that, if we were to rely on central government financing, it would be difficult for us to do. But the roads will have to be done, and private sector want to come in.
So only PPP roads will be told.
Once the private sector comes in, and it is the PPP, those roads will be done. But government will put some tolling system in place such that the tolls will then finance the project.
So it's not a blanket resurrection.
No, it's not a blanket
PPP,
resurrection.
Payment arrangement. I get that.
That is basically
free SHS. I'll come to you. Free SHS. Why are you not even considering a review?
Government's policy on free SHS was to make it free and wholly free, as was defined in the policy for every Ghanaian or any person who wants to, patronize our public institutions. I mean, it's a policy that has started, have some years. People think it should be reviewed, but government still believes that the policy is either still in the embryonic state or mid-embryonic state or post-embryonic state, but we still let it have to be as it is. That is government policy and government direction. Then there are those like my friend Abuja who think that all the problems in our educational sector at the senior high school level is a result of free SHS. That is
but they've been worsened.
No.
Overcrowding,
that is unbelievable.
Food, lack of food
2
money
weeks
coming
ago,
on time.
2 weeks ago, I had to pay monies from my pocket to kind of, is the right term to use, to cement 2 classrooms in a community called Yamfo in the Tano North municipality. I had to use my pocket money. When the head teacher approached me and spoke to me about it, I went to look at the school. I gave them money, I bought them cement, everything, and they did it. This is basic school. It is not free as like we talk about it. But there are inherent problems. The fact that there are problems with our senior high school system cannot be the issue of free senior high school. You understand? So let us not. Has it not worsened
overcrowding?
No. I mean,
we can separate the issues.
Under the NDC, there was no free senior high school, but people were living under trees. Okay,
schooling
under trees. So we cannot say.
But what about the food shortages?
I mean, we have been in this country where for months students were not getting food at the senior high school. There was no free senior high school. If there are problems, let's deal with the problems. I agree.
340 million cedis.
I agree. There are problems in our educational system. There are problems with feeding, problems with sanitation, problems with bed and everything. Hospital attendance. It's not free in this country.
No, but let's be clear.
No, but
there are problems with education.
That is what I'm saying.
But in the past, the schools had a bit of IGF. People were paying fees. They had a bit of money. Now the liquidity problem means they have nothing.
But I agree with you.
So even though we always know that the monies are paid in arrears, the schools did not have an empty bowl to deal with. But the free SHS means that all the money comes from government. And this is not like District Assembly Common Fund that you are paying in arrears. This is operational money for a school.
I understand.
So you are not being candid if you say, because we've had problems in the past, you can't attribute it to free SHS.
No, I'm saying that it is absolutely wrong for anybody to say that the problems in our senior high schools are as a result of free SHS.
We didn't say that. We said they have been worsened.
I'm coming. I listened to him very well.
I'm talking to you.
No, I know you're talking to me.
I'm saying that the problems have been worsened.
I know you're talking to me, but I need to clear the misconception you put in the minds of people.
I'm asking you the
High school that Bama Senior High School and Bechem Presec It was not free senior high school, but 2 months were in darkness.
but
there was no electricity.
It's a different discussion.
So there are problems with our high school system. I agree. Some of them may be as a result that it is free. But we cannot say that because there are problems with the senior high school system, let's scrap free SHS. And that is going to be the panacea.
Nobody has said that.
That cannot
the minister said it will not be reviewed.
Yes.
You are an economist.
That is government policy.
A review. Why won't it be reviewed?
No, government policy is that funding free SHS is not the problem. Okay? And that is why we put together, because all along you hear people say, oh, we have to borrow so much because of free SHS and social.
But the president himself has said financing free SHS has been tough. He said that at the end of last year.
I'm not saying it is not an issue, but I'm saying that is not the main bane of the problems we have as a country. So don't let us boss everything. If you want to look at the critical expenditures that are eating up this government, if you do the stats, government social interventions, all of them put together for the past 5 years, it's just about 15 billion cedis. But we had to spend about 12 billion cedis just on COVID. We had to spend about 25 billion cedis on financial sector cleanup. I'm coming. So what I'm saying is that the totality of expenditure on government flagship programs do not measure up to anywhere near the expenditure we have made on other things. So there are problems. Absolutely. Nobody denies that fact. But don't let us make the argument to say that once you scrap free SHS or you take away the burden cost, then all the problems are solved.
Maybe you are misconstruing review to mean scrapping.
I think the interesting thing, maybe just to rephrase this, has the introduction of the free SHS system compounded an already existing problem in that sense, right? Where yes, there were issues of, lack of boarding house spaces, water and sanitation, all those things. And if we all agree that it perhaps maybe has compounded the problem, that would be a good starting point to have a conversation of how do we change it.
I agree with you on that, Scott. I agree
going
with you.
forward,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And then there are also the other questions about, the equity concerns and to an extent, if some people want to pay and contribute to the running of their schools, things like that. Why
pay?
not? Why must government bear all of that responsibility? And I struggle also personally to accept the argument that, yes, it may not be the biggest item on the expenditure list, but we can still make savings within that. And if you look at the education system, I have argued that those savings that we could possibly even make within free SHS, if people were willing to contribute things, you can channel it to the basic education system, right? Gideon was talking about
primary school. He had to
primary school that he had to help and use your own money to support and things like that, and that is where the biggest problem really is, right? So, for me, yes, you need holistic solutions, but every little helps and every little counts in that regard.
We'll take a short break. When we come back, I'll take more on Dr. Echampon's views on other social intervention programs. We'll also find out where this leaves us, because the IMF program has not even been agreed. This is just the first meeting. There are about 4 meetings. We will not even get any money from the IMF. Can we survive? They are already alleging that we are going to be borrowing an extra 1.3 billion outside of what has been programmed. We'll stay with us. We'll deal with all that on the point of...
Whatever the occasion, with ATL, you can never be out of style. ATL, bringing fabric to life.
Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight we're looking at the supplementary budget or the midterm budget that Ken Ofori-Atta presented in studio. Dr. Theo Champong, economist and financial risk analyst, usually based in London, now in Ghana for a few days. Dr. Gideon Boaku, Vice President spokesperson, and Honorable Governs Kwame Agboja, MP for Adaklu in the Volta region. Here are some comments. Bernard, I really don't understand this government. We have elected this government to solve our problems. Why is Gideon Boaku complaining about their own incompetence? Kweku from La Paz. Bernard, can you tell your guests to extend the toll booths to the gates of the rich people who don't pay, as he's explaining? The transport minister got it wrong initially. Now they had to automate them and link the number plates to drivers' Momo accounts and avoid leakages. This is Comrade Haya from Shai Osudoku. Hello, Bernard. And the Point of View team, please thank God for your life in trying to demystify the budget. Is it true that there's a 500 cedi note being contemplated? Oh, what would they do? What would that do to the economy? This is Pasolo from Sunyai. Good evening, Bernard. Ask Gideon what warranted the Ghana card over interchange comment by his boss. That's a favorite. You can answer that. Eric from Takra, the finance minister says NABCo will be ending in September. But it will interest you to know that 10 months, 10 good months, and these NABCo trainees have received not even a peso from the government. How can you treat the youth like this? The finance minister should stop this. We are suffering. Bernard, it's appalling when government blames the economic crisis we face on Russia-Ukraine war. Bernard, NABCo ended last September because no NABCo beneficiary has received any allowance since last September. I don't understand when the finance minister says it will end this September. I'm confused. Which September? Is it the last one or this one? Bernard, tell Gideon Boaku to stop mentioning COLA in the submission because COLA has not yet been paid. They only need the teachers to go back to the classroom because of WASI. That is why they did this. All right, so lots of comments on all of these matters. I just want to come to you briefly on a couple of things. Agboja is telling me now that the 22 billion claim is on page 97, appendix 2A of the mid-year review. What I have is a 50-something page statement. I don't have the full budget document.
26 pages.
26 pages. Yes. So we don't have the full page. So Honorable Agboja, maybe you have it in Parliament. We don't have it yet. Yeah. I don't know. Any quick thoughts on that and other issues?
Yeah, no, I think, let me briefly touch on the deficit financing argument. I mean, most central banks, as we know, as part of their, monetary policy engagement, can actually support a central government budget two ways. Mm-hmm. You either print money or you borrow from domestic and external sources to then onward lend to the central government. Mm-hmm. And what has happened in the last couple of years is that in some instances, mostly the central bank would sell, T-bills and all of that, and then use that to support the government budget. And then in extraordinary circumstances, they can also print money in that regard. And importantly, in Ghana's case, when you look at the Bank of Ghana Act and then the amendment to it, which is, I think, Act 918, Section 16A2, says that the total loans, advances, and purchases of treasury bills and securities made under subsection 1 shall not at any time exceed 5% of the total revenue of the previous fiscal year. And there's a couple of things underneath that. So the key test here really is if this 22 billion claim is to be, accepted, then did it actually meet this key test? 5%. Right, within the Act. Then number two, there's also a lot of empirical evidence that shows that the deficit financing is a key contributor to the inflation that we are seeing in the Ghanaian, economy, and then in other economies, as well. Because basically, you're pumping a lot of money literally into the system, and then that of course would have a catalytic impact on price hikes. So the inflation in Ghana's context is not just the food, non-food, Russia, Ukraine imported. I think to a certain degree, and I don't have the numbers, I'll consider that, could also be attributable to the deficit financing we are seeing from the side of the central bank, And I was quite happy when they decided today to actually keep the monetary policy rate at 19, because it was just mopping up liquidity in the system and increasing the cost of borrowing as well. Quickly on the road tolls, I have always supported the idea of a road toll. I think we should do it on the key major economic routes, right, in the country, your Ho to Elubo, Accra to Kumasi, Tamale, all of those routes. I also think, and let me quickly add, you told it, but you need to find efficient means of collecting it. So use your Momo digital system, etc. But fundamentally, I think secondly, what should happen is that every vehicle in this country must pay a road tax. In, say, the UK, where I am mostly based, anytime I go and renew my vehicle or do what they call an MOT, you pay a road tax based on the category of your vehicle, the emissions, all of those things. And I think if we're thinking of other ways of raising revenue, then a road tax actually may be appropriate, and it also will satisfy the issues of equity that Gideon, talked about.
Your reaction to some of the points raised, both in the comments and then, we are talking about roads. Doc's Vice President said something about the Ghana card, 1,000 interchanges, which has gone viral. Do you care to make a comment on that?
Oh, I think it's basically, we've been trying to let people understand the usefulness of the Ghana card. I know technological adoption is something that different people have ways, and the speed of which may not be the same across board. So sometimes some of these things people find it difficult to understand and accept the immediate benefits of all of that. So we're trying to create a certain picture for people to appreciate. And I think by and large, people are getting to.
It wasn't a literal. He was just trying to paint a picture of the importance of.
Exactly, and you needed to draw people's attention to how big the significance and advantage of the Ghana card is. So that's it. The thing about central bank financing is not something that is out of the norm. In fact, it is something that central banks do. United States of America, in the midst of this crisis, there was central bank financing. Ghana, too, we are allowed to do that. Just that we have to do it within the confines of the laws and the regulations, just as Theo read. So we need to get into this 22 billion cedis that is being mentioned, disaggregate it, and go into details to see whether or not the requirements, the 5%, of the total revenue requirement was breached or it was not breached. But I haven't seen this and I haven't read this in the budget. So once we get to know the details of it, then we can interrogate. Is your
boss still in charge of the economic management team?
Oh, why not? So but it is not something.
No, I'm asking because you were saying you didn't know some of the details of the budget.
No. The statement, the EMT would. I haven't said I don't know the details of the budget. What I'm saying is that the statement that the finance minister presented that you and I have seen, does not contain this 22 billion central bank financing that.
But Mr. Abuja is saying it is in the full.
I haven't seen the full budget. You understand? I have seen.
The 26 page.
I've had copies of the 26 page, but I haven't seen the full budget. So once we get to the full budget, then we can go into the specifics and see where this is.
Let me just take a final comment from Mr. Abuja. So you are the MP. The debate starts tomorrow. Some of your colleagues were asking the Minister of Finance to resign. Should we expect some action from the minority tomorrow in Parliament?
Well, at the end of the day, all we want is a finance minister that is candid with the people and then takes decisions that addresses our economic situations. This particular finance minister appeared to have lost his way. And I'm happy my good friend, Dr. Bwako, though initially he said that, he more or less emphatically said that there's nothing in the budget about Bank of Ghana printing 22 billion. When you referred him to page 97, appendix 2A, he's now saying he hasn't read his own budget, which is quite interesting. We will do the right needful
by law,
tomorrow.
Parliament must see it before any other person.
Well, it's a public document now. It's we prepared it. It's your government document. So before you say that what I was saying was speculative, you should have actually checked first. So I'm referring you to page 97, appendix 2A. And tomorrow we'll start a debate on it. We'll make our points forcefully to the people of this country.
All right.
And then what we expect is that the decisions by this government would limit the hardship in this on the people, but specifically with free SHS that is talking about. Nobody is asking free SHS to be abolished. Indeed, arguably, under President Mahama were doing a limited form of that, which was based on need basis. And I said that 47 students were going to school in Adaklu in 2016 who are not paying fees. In fact, we're giving them school bags and everything. The problem we have today is the wholesale implementation without the needed resources to support them. I mean, reducing our kids to less than this. So we'll start a debate tomorrow.
Fair enough. Thank you. We'll be following. That was Governor Kwame Agboja, MP for Adaklu, ranking member on the Road and Transport Committee. In studio, Dr. Theo Champong, economist and political risk analyst, and Dr. Gideon Boaku, spokesperson to the Vice President. Thank you for watching. The Business Dashboard is next. We'll be with you next time. Bye-bye.
The Point of View is brought to you by Cowbell Coffee. Cowbell Coffee. Taste it, love it.